Hi, I'm Aniek Hebinck, and I work as a researcher for DRIFT, the Dutch Research Institute for Transitions. And in this video, I will summarize how participants of the Shared Green Deal Arena introductory webinar saw the state of transition in mobility. So here you'll see the Xcurve. As you can see, the Xcurve Formability has a lot going on in the quadrants of build up and stabilize. So basically, participants of this first workshop already had a pretty good idea of what they wanted the mobility system to move towards. So the phase out quadrant is probably received the least amount of attention, so this has not been populated so much. So let's take a look at the upward line in the Xcurve, and this is where participants have placed niche innovation in mobility in Europe. And the mobility experts in our webinar say that there are already quite a number of promising niche practices to be found across Europe. And examples include transforming streets by taking space away from cars, focusing on shared mobility such as public transport or car sharing, but also the idea of combining mobility with urban planning. A good example of that is the 15-minute city, which is a place where essentially you only ever need 15 minutes to get anywhere you need to be. And above that line in the top left corner, we see the mobility regime in Europe. Part of this regime is individual or micro-mobility. And this is really about mobility that takes up valuable space in urban areas and congestion. But it's also about a culture in which micro-mobility is connected to status. So why are big, expensive and wasteful vehicles still considered cool? In addition, in this regime, people with fewer means also frequently have less access to mobility options. So let's take a look at the top right corner of the Xcurve, and here we see what better and more fair futures for Europe in 2050 the participants came up with. We're starting with making cities for people again, instead of for cars, so car-free areas. On top of that, our mobility experts thought that more accessible and affordable public transport options are important in this future. So rather than traveling solo, shared mobility is a key dimension for a better and more fair mobility future in Europe. But before this can happen, the regime line really needs to move down in the Xcurve. We need breakdown of the following regime elements. Mentioned here are putting a stop to subsidies and political priority for car mobility. Incentives for the car industry also really need to be phased out. A change of culture is needed around the image of traditional cars to encourage a more shared future. So, to summarize, this state of transition sees a clear future for mobility that is shared and not so car dominant. While there are already great shared mobility options to be found, like public transport, these will need to be improved and strengthened. But for this transition to really take place, we need to phase out support such as subsidies or policies that promote an individually moving car-based society.